4:30. I'd like to call the Tuesday, December 12th, 2017 work session called to order. I'll entertain approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any public comments, Chuck?
No, sir.
Okay. Seeing we have none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn from the work session. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now I will call the monthly board meeting, Tuesday, December 12th, 2017, and call it to order. And I will also approve, or accept and approve of the agenda. Are we going to make some changes?
Yes. I need to move the substitute teacher report from consent agenda items up to requiring action. And then I'd also like to move the Belcher Scholarship nominee consideration up to the top.
Under rec.
Okay, recognition.
And then
Under recognition.
FEF out of consent, just so we have some clarification.
Just
Board
FEF?
policy.
Just FEF?
FEF.
Okay. Okay.
Second.
All right, any further discussion or changes? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, I'll turn it over to Ms. Hollifield for recognition. And first she has Missouri All-State Choir.
Good afternoon. It's good to see all of you tonight. Yes, I do need you. Always.
Yeah.
Okay. At this time, we would like to recognize Ms. Taylor Graham and Ms. Jett. On Saturday, November the 11th, turn and face.
There we go.
On Saturday, November the 11th, Ms. Taylor Graham was selected to represent Sikeston High School and the Southeast District of MMEA and MCDA in the 2018 Missouri All-State Choir. Taylor is a 16-year-old junior at Sikeston High School. It is rare for a junior to be selected for this honor, and as a member, not an alternate, Taylor was the first of the altos announced as being selected for the group following the performance of the junior-senior all-district choir that evening. Ms. Graham was also featured soloist that evening. We are just very proud of you for that honor. Ms. Jett is our high school choir teacher, and so we just want to thank you for your hard work and your time, and I know this is something you're very proud of, so thank you. At this time, we want to recognize our 2017-18 state champion cheerleading squad. I'm going to call all the girls in, and then I'm going to give you a little information about the girls, okay, and about their team. First, we have Mia Arndt. Grace Blanton. Dallas Brown. Captain Natalie Fennell. Caroline Fodge. This team began working towards this goal back in May. They competed in July in the Regional 3A Small Division where they took first place, which qualified them for the state competition. Starting in August, they began preparing for their state competition. They competed on October the 29th against 14 other teams. They took first place in their division, making them state champions, scoring 293 points. Not only did they take first in their division, but were only outscored by 4 other teams who competed that day, which included teams in the 5A small and large division. Congratulations to our state champions. We appreciate all your hard work, your time, your dedication, and your pride in being a Sikeston Bulldog.
Thank you, girl. It's pretty good.
Good job.
Thank you.
That it? Easy enough.
Pictures.
Okay, next on the agenda is the consideration of the MSBA, Missouri State School Board Association Belcher Scholarship nominee. And just to give you a little bit on the Belcher Scholarship, each board around the state will select a nominee from their school. MSBA then awards 17 scholarships to Missouri high school seniors. 1 scholarship winner is selected from each of the 17 MSBA designated regions. Those 17 winners then compete for one larger scholarship. So the 16 regional winners are awarded $750 scholarship, and the statewide winner is awarded a $1,750 scholarship. Our nominee this year is Allison Miles. So we need to first we'll recognize Allison here in just a minute, but first we need to have a motion and approve this.
Motion to approve Allison Miles as the representative from Sikeston for the Belcher.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Come on up, Allison. Congratulations. Thanks so much, Allison.
Speech, right?
Well, actually, you do have to prepare. If you do win, you'll have to prepare a speech, so get ready. All right. Congratulations. That's wonderful. That is wonderful.
I thought I was going to stay. I almost got to get a picture.
You want me to?
Up there, yeah.
Come on, Mr. Matt, back in my station.
I know.
Thank you.
There you go. All right. You're welcome.
Thank you all. See if we've got our agenda correct. We're under informational now. And so we're going to go into the Wing Elementary design and budget update. And I've got Brock Miller and Fleming, Bill Giesian and Scott Fleming, and Ellen Wiley's here too to present that information. So we will just turn it over to you guys. You go ahead and share with the board. They already have the handout. I gave that information to them. So we can go from there.
Great. Tough act to follow. It's quite impressive group of folks. Scott Fleming here again tonight to talk about Wing Elementary, and just want to again thank the board for allowing us to be part of this process. We've been coming to Sikeston for many years now, and I think we're this close to finally getting to that new school built, so we're pleased to be able to talk to you about that tonight. I want to tell you that the process that you select, the construction management process that you select is working well. You might remember that when we met with you previously, we had a building that was $206 a square foot. Well, since Brock Miller priced that project, we've worked with our engineers, our consultants, and we've looked at a number of different items in the project where we could value engineer the project down without sacrificing any of the program. Any project's made up of 3 different components. Your cost, in your case, it's $11 million. That's the ceiling. You can't go above that. It's also the size, and the size of the project is dictated by the number of classrooms you need, by how big a school you need, how many students you need to serve. So we haven't sacrificed any of that. The third component of this 3-leg stool is the quality, and you've seen the quality of the product that we're proposing. It's certainly not opulent off the chart, but it is a really, really nice school. You're going to really like the quality of the school. So we're balancing those 3, trying to give you as big a school as we possibly can with the quality that you need within that $11 million budget. And I'm here to tell you, Bill will echo this as well, that we're right there. We're, I think, exactly where we need to be. If you're like me and want to know the whodunit, the mystery novel, you always turn to the back page. We're at about 11.4 right now, which is above our 11 million, but we're not alarmed by that number because we have built into place, and we will be building into place, a number of ad alternates, which would allow us to bring a base bid to you, we believe, under the $11 million price tag once the bids are taken. And then we'll take as many of those ad alternates as we possibly can. We're in the process of determining what those might be. Some of them might be the amount of playground equipment, perhaps, or kitchen equipment, those sorts of things, where you can actually open the school, but maybe deal with those issues sometime later. But we're in the process of developing that list of alternatives, and we'll bring those to you when the bids come. As I mentioned, the project's $206 a foot down to $184 a foot, which our sheet shows you. And we did a number of different things. We looked at reducing some of the architectural stone that we tried to get into the project. Well, it's just too costly. So now we're replacing that with brick, and that's included in the price, which Bill talked to you about. So items like that, which you probably never would have known the difference, but the items we're trying to get into raise the quality, just couldn't quite make that happen. We reduced the size of the building from 57,000 to 53,000 square feet. So the 4,000 square foot reduction was primarily done in the hallway. Some of the corridors were a little wider than you would normally have. We maybe took a foot out, still plenty wide. And a couple other areas we took a little fat that was in the project down. And again, we do this. We design a lot of schools. There's nothing in there that would alarm me that we're delivering something that you're not going to be happy with. It's going to be a really nice, functional, good-looking school. The last thing I want to mention is you asked us to look at the safe space, and the safe space premium is included in this number. And we looked at a number of different areas. We looked at the corridor system, you might recall, taking the corridor, making that safe space. We also looked at the gymnasium as a potential safe space. But we ended up using the cafeteria for a safe space, which was the most cost-effective way to do it, primarily because we could actually put a column in the middle of that cafeteria and minimize that span. These are big, heavy concrete T-beams that enclose that space, and that's what gives it the protection that space needs. And those big T-beams are heavy, as you might imagine, so we've broken that span out with a column in the middle of the cafeteria, which won't hurt the function of the space at all. Of course, in the gymnasium, you can't do that. So working with Brock Miller, we've decided that is the most economical, cost-effective way to solve the safe space. We also have in the 6 openings around the perimeter of the cafeteria, storm doors and/or shutters, which would seal off that space in the event of a storm. So that's included in the price too. So that's kind of a summary of what we've done architecturally, and Bill, hopefully I didn't steal too much thunder.
Not at all. I don't have much thunder. I just want to piggyback on what Scott said, because the construction manager at risk process is a newer vehicle for delivering projects, but I think the benefits of it have already kind of played out. I've sat in too many bid openings where you don't find out that you're 1.8 million over a project until all the bids come in, and you're ready to get that project going, and the first thing you do is stop because you've got to do some value engineering. The numbers that we've been working to provide Scott, not that Scott can't give them himself, but there's just a difference in the proximity that we have to the contractors that actually not only are doing this type of work today, but will be bidding on this project when we actually go to bid on it. And so that's what we've done on both of these exercises, budgeting exercises. We've gone out to the Festy Masonries, the Pyramid Roofing, the concrete guys. We've gotten pricing from them based upon the documents as they were at that point. And the very first budget we did, I never told you that number, that was intentional. I know you were trying to get out of it. Because it was a big number, but it was a big number based upon kind of a very soft design that didn't have a lot of detail. The documents are much more developed at this point. And so each time we get more detail in the documents, we're able to drill down on that number and make it a little bit tighter. So this number that we have now, like I told Scott, I don't even consider this 400,000 over budget, not because I think you're going to go higher, but because I think we've kind of hit that sweet spot with the configuration and the features of the building. And just by taking a look at having some options on the pricing that allow us on bid day to say, well, if we're a little bit over, we can take this alternate to get it in budget, or if it's under, then we can add these things on to enhance it. And I would love to sit here and say I can tell you exactly what that number is going to be on bid day, but I can't, because there's just too many variables in both the industry and the market that are going to influence those prices. Everything from market factors, the storms in the south have had an impact on several construction products, everything from pipe and conduit to plywood. The local factors with how much other work is out there at the time that we did this can also be a big factor. So the 11.4 kind of captures from a construction standpoint this snapshot, this picture at this time, but it's based on pricing from contractors that do this day in, day out, and will be providing the pricing to us when we actually put the bids out. So I've got a lot of confidence in that number, and like I told Scott, I'm a lot farther back from the edge of the roof than I was when we spoke last time. I really feel comfortable about where we're at and the direction we're heading, and we're going to continue to drill down into what the owner's looking for, what you're looking for in the project, and how we can arrange the bidding so that we've got options in order to get the most value into the project once the bids come in.
Questions?
Yeah, no, I was going to say,
Scott, with the cafeteria being in the safe room, are we gonna lose a lot of that natural lighting, or will those shutters handle that?
Shutters will be raised up, which will allow the windows to remain in the original design, and in the event of a storm, we'll just shut them down. So, yeah, that's a concern of mine too. Natural light is such a big deal in schools. I'm a big proponent of getting natural light anywhere we can. We'll have plenty of it in the cafeteria.
it's kind of, if I can add on, one of the things we're looking at is they do make FEMA-rated windows that don't require shuttering. So we're taking a look at that option also, so we can maintain the full open light, not requiring the shutters, but they'll still need the FEMA rating.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I have a question along the same lines, but I'm curious as to what the difference in pricing was. I hate to not have, I know we have a gym, but I think it'd also be nice to have another space that could be used pseudo like a gym or a big, somewhere where people could congregate and not have an option in the room. So I'm just curious as to what the price difference was point-wise from doing corridor safe places as opposed to moving to a cafeteria.
I want to say that the increase in cost to make the cafeteria safe space was about $180,000. The corridors was about $340,000, and the gymnasium was heading north of that when we stopped and said it's just not economical to try to work it in. We never really kind of finished that because there was still a lot of design elements that would have to be considered. But those were the two that we did have.
So like 150, no, like 250?
Yeah,
Another-
Yeah, another 160.
Great. And I probably shouldn't even mention the column, because now you're stuck on it. I really don't even think it's gonna be anything you're gonna even notice. It'll just kind of go away.
When I envision a column, I envision the columns at the high school. You know how big they are, but it's not gonna be anything like that. It's more of a,
Probably 6-inch column at the Dells. Okay. That was my technical reference. No, it'll be a pipe column of 6-8 inches or something. It won't be, I don't think it'll be significant.
Well, and obviously it would accommodate a lot more people in that space than in the corridor too. Community purpose.
Right, and just all those doors in the corridor, each classroom would have to be a storm door, and the hardware is just really, day in and day out, it's kind of clumsy. It's okay, but it's just not as easy to deal with as it would be if you don't have a big, large space like we're dealing with at the cafeteria. I really think this is the best solution.
Everybody happy?
Good.
I'm just curious, did we run into some problems with our source report, material testing? I see those went way over the initial estimate, and particularly with the materials estimate, it's over double. I just was curious.
Scott, the numbers that we have on there right now are like for testing, materials testing. I think originally it was 10,000. After discussion with Ellen, we decided to bump it up to 25,000 just based on recent experience.
So these haven't been
These have not,
spent.
they haven't
Okay.
been investigated,
Okay.
estimated. We just wanted to get something that we thought was reasonable in there.
Okay.
And when it comes down to actually hiring an inspector, we'll work with Scott to put together a request for proposals from different testing agencies, asking them to give us a price based upon these testing criteria, just like we did out the other items, and we can take a look at that and choose the one that we like the best, based upon their services and their cost structure, that sort of thing.
One other question, the utility deposits and stuff, is that anything, I mean, is that something you got from them hard, or? is that-
Those are soft numbers too, we just put them in yesterday. We have contacted both the electrical and the gas utility supplier, because each one works differently.
Right.
Laclede Gas a lot of times says, I'm getting service out of you for the next 20 years, so I'm going to put it in for free. Some utilities, based upon what they're providing, might charge. So we're trying to work with them to see if they've got a cost structure, what that would be, just so we can kind of work that in.
any other comments or questions? Gentlemen, ladies, thank you so much for coming out and talking to us today. We appreciate it very much. Merry Christmas to you.
She's having a panic attack,
Where does this put us on target of next steps? Are we?
We're proceeding, I mean, we haven't stopped, we're just continuing to proceed, and bids will happen in February, construction. We're still on track.
Thank you, everyone. You know, you got that information from Mike? Okay, very good.
Little rolling.
Okay, let's go ahead and move into the second item under information. That is the Career and Technology Report. And I have Mr. King here.
So I have 27 minutes, right? Yep.
Minus 26.
We had 5 goals for the SETC this last year. The first one was to improve our math skills, and which has been very difficult. The DESI number up to last year was 90% attainment. Now they've dropped it down to 70. This is kind of one I'm the most proud of, to be honest with you, because last few years we were 35%, 34%, 37%, and then we jumped all up to 45%. So we're not, outside of 2015, we've made gains every year. So hopefully maybe I can say this next year, I can say 50%, closing that gap in on the 70% meet that DESI would like for us to have. My next goal was to increase placement in the related fields. We were 94, 95, 95, and 96 this year. So we're getting closer. 100% is very difficult. Very, very difficult for not only us, but any of the 53 career schools in the entire state. So, but we're getting there.
What are the averages? What's the state average?
The state average is, I couldn't tell you the exact number, but I know it's under 90.
Oh, it's on
Oh,
here.
it's on
It's
there.
96.
Okay,
96.
96.
Yeah, these are ours. Yep, so, okay. Oh, they're right there beside the state, I'm sorry, yeah.
Right,
We are above the state average this year. We have been above the state average every year, except for 2015. We just struggled with 2015 for some reason. All right, the improved level of the skilled attainment by the graduates, that's our IRC test. We 61, 66, 68, 74. We're making some pretty big jumps on that. And it's all, and I'll read that, my closing statement. Increase the completion rate to 100%. That's our kids that start, finish with us. Once again, that's kind of a difficult thing to do, just because things change. And it's not always us, it's assembly schools too. Those also include our assembly school people. But we were at 100% this year, first time since I've been here. Pretty happy with that. That does not happen very often. If, well, very, 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 very rarely. So we're pretty excited about that number. And that was our 5 goals. Now, our 3 goals for the next year, I've dropped them down from 2 because we are starting to meet our goals that we need, but I've still kept the ones that we have to work on to improve. Still going to keep our math skills. We got to work on that. Lucia Henson does an outstanding job helping those kids to understand that technical math, and they're getting better. The numbers prove it. We're going to increase it. Keep working on our placement. Try to get that number because that's important for everybody. That's definitely going to be more important when next month when I talk to you about Perkins enhancement. And then finally, we're going to improve our level of attainment, and for our graduates, we're going to keep working on getting our IRC test scores up there. IRC tests are certification tests, guys, so those kids have to pass those to come out with those certifications. I was talking to all body today, and the kids were sitting there knocking out certification tests because they're modules. So you do a section, then you get a little skill level built there, then you do another section, and so on and so forth. So you take a series of tests all year. Not every program's like that, but some of them are. And those kids have been doing a great job. They're really starting to get it, and it's because of our teachers doing an outstanding job getting those kids ready to go and getting them out and getting them certified and helping them find jobs if they choose that, or sending them off to tech school or to a 4-year college if they want to go to that. So they just do a great job with it. I can't say enough great things about it. So, guys, any questions?
When you take into consideration the completion rate at 100%, what does that include kids that drop out of Sikeston Public Schools?
That's our completers from the ones that started with us. No, it is not included.
So if they drop out, they're not factored into this?
Correct.
Okay.
We have some, I can't think off the top of my head that's dropped out. Any of the people, any of our dropouts were in our programs. I can't think. Now I know we've had a couple from sending schools.
But they're not in this.
Because they never had an opportunity to complete it.
Okay.
So that's one of the things you got to have the opportunity to do it, like not dropping out or getting kicked out or so on.
SCTC is a really big asset to our high school. It was produced that.
I appreciate that. I'll pass that sentiment along.
Yeah, please do.
Any other questions?
Big asset to our school and to the surrounding schools.
Not
You
just.
know, we've had 2, 3, well, we had one and then it came back and we've had 2 additional ones over the last, 3 to 4 years, so, it's pretty good. It's,
I didn't go looking for them, they came
Yeah.
and found us.
So how many city schools do we have?
If you count Sikeston, we have 11. So that's just how I count them when people ask, technically we have 10. So, but yeah, they came, those other schools came to us.
yeah,
I mean,
we
we can go
consider
to
it a
this.
Sunday school.
But, you know, it's all good teachers, they do a great job. And you know, their talents, they are turning out a quality product. I mean, it's just what it is, so.
Does New Madrid still have career tech?
Much about
Well, I knew they were struggling in the past, so.
They've still got theirs, but you look at their numbers compared to our numbers, Rich would argue with me, but I think ours are a little better. I haven't compared them this year, but in the past they've been better. So, they've got more numbers, but the numbers aren't nearly as good as ours, so. He's retired this year, he's got all of it. Good for you.
Thank you, Chad.
Thanks, Chad. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I got 25 minutes left.
Okay, next we have the gifted program report. I have Ms. Crater and Ms. Friday. Ms.
Friday Sullivan.
Friday Sullivan, Ms. Sullivan. Sorry. Some things just kind of never go away, do they?
Okay, so I made notes this year, and I don't know if Haley can read them, so we'll try. We're not going to read our goals, because you have them. So our first, I can read them to you. Ready?
Yes, here, yeah, okay, I'll take this. So, our first goal is, we found it to be important because, and I'm going to speak without citing properly.
I forgive you, it's okay. It's all good.
So I learned one time that students who are entering into kindergarten who have had someone read to them have a vocabulary of about 5,000, as opposed to those who have not, between 1,500 and 2,000, which is, I mean, they're already behind, right? And then I learned recently that Shakespeare had a working vocabulary that he spoke using these words, 54,000 words that he spoke, and we use a measly 5,000. And so we are working on building our working vocabulary, building our students' knowledge.
Their working vocabulary, which are words that they actually understand and use.
So we find it important to encourage their reading vocabulary because we know that they're reading them and understanding them, but they're not also utilizing them in language and their writing. And those are things that we're trying to push. So some ways that we're going to do that is, one, by having this goal. Also, we have some vocabulary lists that we've been working on and allocating words to specific grades. And we want them
She's
to be
doing a much better job than I am, that's fine. She's smiling at me. She's much better.
never
Yeah,
grade on it.
I just threw myself under, it's okay.
So these we're working on making them measurable by giving vocabulary bees, which is kind of like a spelling bee, but they would know and understand the meaning of it as opposed to just how to spell the word. And they would be able to master 80% of those words at each of the 4 levels that we have, which we're working on grouping those levels. They may be kind of words that we work on for 2nd grade, or 7th, 8th, 9th grade. That could be a potential like grouping. So we're between she and I, we would have 4 total levels. And what we also find to be most important are ways to evaluate using their writing and our observation and self-impaired assessment through writing and classroom dialogue. You know, having those conversations with each other, seeing and reading each other's work, utilizing those words and saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just used this replacement word in my, like when I was in conversation, as opposed to the
Vocabulary tests don't work. I mean, they're good at short-term memory, though. We're looking to actually change their paradigm and change behavior and to expand them, because it's great to have PSAT and pre-ACT and all and vocabulary well, instruction in high school. You're gonna learn these words, and thank goodness we don't have to do the analogies that the SAT used to require, but it's not helpful unless it actually becomes part of their working vocabulary. And one thing that Ms. Sullivan has done is she puts up a word of the week, and it's in the hallway, and so all the kids on that hallway see it, and it's been reinforced because then not only do the first grade and kindergarten, second grade, but also the fifth grade, well, no, you're not really using it properly. And so they've taken it back to the classrooms. Am I making that up? I did hear somebody tell me that, right? Okay. So they're taking it back to
I
the
mean, in
classrooms.
the
and
sixth
using
grade
it.
classrooms in
Right.
our building and the fifth grade classrooms in our building, they all walk past my room, and are using and learning these words sometimes.
Right, cool. Okay, so our second goal, and we found that to be better than any standardized test or anything. And our second goal deals with our parent outreach. And the bottom line, we bit off a little more than we could chew, and we have found that while we have these wonderful, while we have Twitter handlers and Facebook pages and Instagram accounts and other things, our students use Instagram and our parents don't. And so we have gone to, so we use old people Instagram, which is called Facebook. So we have two closed groups. We invited all our parents to be members of that. We've been conducting forums and questionnaires and showcasing student work and various, and those kinds of methods, which are actually much better than just posting them on the school website, because we're not granted privacy rights. And we like to treat our classes as if they're truly and officially part of special ed. Now, we know that gifted is part of special ed, but it's not officially part of special education. But we do like to maintain that privacy, because we don't want to, we have a special population, we don't like calling them out. Any questions so far?
Well, and just like before parent-teacher conferences, I just asked my parents, I said, this is our week to discuss advocating for your child. So what concerns do you have that you're maybe afraid to bring up in your conferences with the regular ed teachers? Because you're going to walk in there and they're going to say, your child is performing in my classroom, but you don't know what their social, emotional lives look like in a classroom, and you may not always feel comfortable broaching that subject. So we kind of had those conversations the week before conferences just to kickstart their thinking, like, you know what, I actually have been wondering, how are they getting along with their same age peers? I need to ask that question. Whereas before, they might not have, they might have, but it was also really comforting, I think, to some of my parents to say, like, they saw other people saying, oh, well, I agree. I've been seeing my child dealing with some perfectionism issues, and I think that I need to discuss that as well. And so, you know, again, I think it just encouraged them to start opening up and having these conversations, whereas they might have just said, thank you, I appreciate you telling me that my child's doing well.
We mentioned I'm going to jump in. We mentioned, moving on, one more goal. We're going to keep goals 1 and 2 as they are. We're just going to continue to further flesh them out. We have a third goal that we're adding for next year, and we're really excited about it because it is that we will create independent real-world and independent study real-world-based projects that challenge and support the needs of our gifted students. And what we're really, imagine science fair, but creative, gifted thought. Like, that's really what we're hoping to find. And so we're going to have our Eagle Expo in the spring, and we would like it to really become an annual event where each student grades. We're just starting with kindergarten. We have a kindergarten, so kindergarten through 9th grade, they will all have studies within certain parameters, and they will be done mostly on either when we're finished with work in class or on student free time. You know, their work at home, they work a little bit in class, but class time won't be devoted to it, because the point is it to be with what I'm best at, or maybe genius hour, but not be so organized like, now it's genius hour, okay, go be a genius, go think. But they get to choose and they get to do these, but also most importantly, they get to showcase it. They have to showcase it to the community, which we think is invaluable. And we mentioned over and over again, but we mentioned several times what it is. We talk about these needs and what it means to, what the needs of gifted students are. And here's an idea of what they are. They're only covered grades, ages 10 through high school. And gifted adolescence really starts more or less at age 10, and it ends, this is what's hysterical, it ends more or less at 21/22/23, because the longer gifted students are in school, even if it's graduate school, but they are continually they have this extended adolescence. But this was meant for parents. I gave this out at parent-teacher conferences, but it's also meant for teachers. And so if you look and see like the needs of gifted adolescents, it's not just their social emotional needs, but it's also some of their academic needs. And they have a lot of the why questions. You know, they're splitting your existential concerns. And you may find your own children on this, and you may be helpful, maybe not. Please don't throw away in front of me, because I printed them myself. So, you know, I'll leave the tip jar out. But if you have any questions, we talk a lot about we meet the needs, but nobody really explains what those are. And sometimes it's why is the world the way it is. We had a whole conversation this past week about Jerusalem in my 8th grade class, and it was very interesting because it's the most multicultural class I have. I have a student who is Islamic, I have a student who's Catholic, and I have a bunch of Protestant students. And so we're all learning different things, and we pull out our news articles, and we read about it, and why is this such a big deal? And I don't really think that the same level of respect would not have happened in a place where it wasn't a safe community. And I think that that's really the most important thing, that what we offer is a safe community, and we really appreciate having a program. In the last 6 weeks, I've had 2, and I'm running over time, I'm taking it just 25 minutes, so okay?
You're allowed.
But I've had, this is my 10th year teaching here, and I've been teaching, you know, gifted education the whole time. And I love my job. But this is the first time that I've ever had anyone follow me or come to visit my classroom who wasn't a parent, who wasn't an administrator, but I've had someone from Cape Girardeau, and I had someone from Bell City to come, because we're a really great point that we have, our gifted programs are funded by the state, but they're not, our budgets are not line items, and Sikeston has always set that money aside for the gifted program, because it's given to schools that have accredited, certified, established programs, and not every school does. And we're very, we are the only one in, I don't know, 1 mile radius who has a program above 8th grade. I mean, even Cape and Jackson don't have established programs where maybe kids will come and they'll be in a mixed classroom, like they might come to the math teacher, and they might be able to get their gifted minutes or get their special ed minutes, but it's in a classroom of other people. And so we're very grateful that we have a board that supports our students this way. Because we really like to use them on we love their test scores. And we like it when they go to MIT, and we like it when they get accepted to places. I mean, we do, you know, we do, but
we also like meeting the needs of these.
Well, we like it when they stay in school, and we like it when they don't drop out, when they're not in that big number of students who do. So do you have any questions? Thank you so much for supporting our program and our students. Thank you.
Questions?
No.
I just like to say, I think it's great as a mom of a kid that's in the gifted program. I mean, I can tell that she has really, you know, it's been a huge benefit to her. And I'm glad that you talked about the vocabulary, because she's been coming home all year long talking about how smart Miss Crater is, because she's using big words. She talks about how smart her gifted teacher is, and so this explains what she's, you know, she uses these big words, Mom, she's so smart. And I just laugh, you know, I'm just like, I know she's made, she says words, and it's been a really good thing for her, because it's really got her wheels turning.
That's what we want to do.
A lot of times, these kids that are in this program get very bored in regular class. And I know that she talks about, you know, most of the discussion she has with me is what happens in this class, because it's got her mind going, and I appreciate that a lot. So.
Thank you. And we like them to be occupied, because then they create misbehaviors. So nobody wants a really smart kid who can, you know, hack into something or do something. We just don't want that. So that's part of it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you,
Appreciate
ladies.
it. Mr. Lauer is going to present the technology report. Ready?
Yes, I'm going to combine and answer correctly. I had 6 goals last year. First one, improve web resources. We are moving more and more to using Google products, online, Google Drive, Google Docs, and with the help of Ms. Gilmer and Ms. Hinton, they really started pushing towards Google Classroom. and that seems to be going well. With the Google Drive, staff and students actually have access to their documents outside the district, and that really helps a lot. So we've been moving toward more Google products. And as you can see in front of you, we updated, as of your last meeting, BDocs. It's an internal web server that was housed on a 2003 server. It was old, it needed to be updated. We changed it to a virtual server so that it's now running a Windows 16, more modern operating system. It's more secure. We were able to shut down a physical server, something we don't have to maintain, something we don't have to back up, and something we don't have to draw power from now. So those are improving web resources. Number 2 was to update PCs. We have PCs in our district that was here when I started in 2006. As anybody knows who has any kind of an old PC, 11-year-old PC doesn't work very well. So we are trying to replace them as quickly as we can. One of the strategies we're using is to use a secondary market. These are markets that buy off-lease computers from companies. They refurbish them and they sell them outright. We get these, new computer would cost roughly $900,000 depending on what we're configuring. We get these for around $300 to $400. And they come with another 3 to 5 year warranty from the vendor as soon as we get them. So not only are they 3 years old or so when they're out of manufacturer warranty, but the vendor we buy them, the secondary vendor we buy them from, gives us an additional 3 to 5 year warranty. If we need parts or anything for them, they take care of that. The other thing we've been doing is buying more Chrome devices. One of the old computers are just old, and these Chrome devices are new. They start up fast. They are very quiet, and they don't produce heat. And it's been working really well. I've not heard many complaints. Actually, we'll talk about that in a minute, but we put them in classrooms in place of student computers, and it seems to be going well. Goal number 4 was to improve our local storage. I added more storage and more enclosures to our virtualization system. That allowed us to move VDocs over to the virtualization side. It allowed us to update our mail server from a 2010 version to a 2016, and during that migration, most staff members, were giving more space for their email. Because we added this additional storage and updated that mail server. So I didn't say all because some had already got up to that new limit on the old system. But if they didn't, as soon as they got moved over, they automatically got more storage space. Also, by adding that extra space, we can give staff members more H drive space. This is their local server folder that they can store stuff, and we back it up every night. We can give them more space. It also gives us more room for backups. Now, if I give you more space, I got to have room, and then I've got to have room for the backups as well. So we were able to do that. We give staff more space on an as-needed basis. They put in work requests. We see what they're doing. Sometimes if they've got music and stuff in their personal collection, we ask them to delete that instead of giving them more space. But for the most part, we give them space when they ask for it. And then, as I said, with moving to the Google applications, there's also storage there. Now, there's trade-offs. That storage at Google is available inside and outside the district, but it's not being backed up by me. Here, on the H drive, I'm backing it up, but it's only accessible while you're in the district. So there are trade-offs in that. The 5th one was to improve the educational environment. Going back to the Google Chrome devices, we've been taking student PCs. If you went into a classroom, a teacher would have 3 to 5 PCs sitting along a wall, and that was the computers they used in their room. Well, we've been trying an experiment, mostly at Lee Hunter, taking those computers out and replacing them with Chrome devices, usually Chromebooks. The first teacher we did it to, I asked her for feedback, and her response was it opened up the space in her room. They can move around with them. Her one negative remark was she has to charge the Chromebooks. So it's trade-offs on that. But everyone where we've done this, they've been positive feedback for replacing those old machines. C Building Lab, 30 computers was in there last year. We took those out and put in Chrome devices in there. It helps with testing. We can put the Chromebook, their Chrome boxes, into what's called kiosk mode. So you turn it on, loads up the test for EOCs. Student doesn't have to sign in, just power on, test. It doesn't generate heat. This year, for the first time, Ms. Morgan told me that they had students complaining that it was too cold in that room because there wasn't 30 computers heating up that confined space. And we have replaced several projectors where we can, failing projectors that just get so dim, they haven't failed, but you really can't use it. So we're replacing them wherever we can. And the last one was outside funding. As you know, we received E-rate this year. Those access points we actually put in over Christmas break. So we got money there. That's the only outside money that I was able to secure this year, but Southeast did get a Monsanto grant, and we helped them get some Chromebooks out of that. So those were the goals from last year. The goals for this year are pretty well keep in line. The web resources, the only thing that didn't get touched last year that will get touched this year is SharePoint, an internal document repository that is atrocious. It needs to be redesigned. It was not designed correctly the first time, and I was the one who designed it back in 2006. So it is needing an upgrade. It needs to be updated, but there's no sense of updating what's there without redesigning it. So that is on the list to do. Continue to get these older computers out of the district. I mean, if it's old and it takes 7 minutes to boot up, are they actually using them? So if we're going to use the technology, let's get something there that they can actually use. We got to keep working on getting the network. We do wireless surveys where we can. We replace network equipment. If we do not have the infrastructure backbone to support the outlying regions, it's not going to help anyway. So we keep replacing switches where we can, improving the environment, changing out the computers, changing out the projectors. One of the things that we're looking at, instead of a smart board and projector, using an interactive flat panel. What it is a great big TV that you can touch. So instead of having to have something on the ceiling and the wall, it just mounts on the wall. It's all lighting in the back. It's easier to read. We have one in the district that's going to be moved to a teacher's room very soon so we can get her feedback.
Are those more portable?
They can't go on the stand, and that's a good use for them, except that it takes the footprint of the room. You know, you've got, I don't know the exact dimensions, but you're talking about 4 foot by 2 foot minimum of floor space, foot space on a cart, and that can get tricky. You don't want to do anybody tripping over the carts. But yes, they are meant to be mounted on a stand or on the wall. And then again, securing funds. E-rate is intensive, but we will do it every time that, as long as the program exists, and keep trying to find other resources where we can.
Questions for Eddie?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You talked about at Lee Hunter replacing the PCs and
Yes, ma'am.
with Chromebooks.
Yes, ma'am.
Are they, on those Chromebooks, can they access the internet?
Yes.
Well, here's my concern about that. When you have PCs that are 5 of them against a wall, you can see you can see everything those kids are doing.
Yes, ma'am.
When you give those kids something like this, that they can sit in their hand and they can go to their seat or whatever, and you take away the ability for that teacher to see what, if you have 5 of them out, what those kids are looking at or whatever.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's just something, I mean, I would just,
The teacher is able to, we put the Chromebooks where the computers work. That we hook them up there. It's up to the teacher if you can leave them as stations right along that wall and monitor them just like they were desktop computers. Or they have the capabilities of, okay, take the Chromebook and you 3 go over here and do this. That's completely up to the teacher. We just try to get the technology that they can use in their hands.
and I have another question. On the, on our, I don't know what the technology term is, but our, what am I trying to say? It just left my brain. Firewall, like.
Firewall content.
Content filters.
Okay. Are you able to see when a child gets on a site that they're not supposed to? Are you alerted immediately?
We are, it is recorded and logged anytime anybody accesses, staff member or student, a site that is supposed to be blocked. They get a block page and it is logged in the system. Does it email us on certain keywords? Yes, it will email us on certain things. But Usually what happens is once a week, Kim runs a report of all the quote-unquote bad sites that people have tried to go to for the weekend. And then if it's a lot, she alerts the administrator of that building of what's going on.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am?
Thank you, Eddie.
Thanks,
Hi,
Ed.
Tom.
I'm sorry, yeah, we have.
Yeah, so why the Chromebooks as opposed to iPads?
Price. I can get a Chromebook with a license for under $200.
So when they start using the Chromebooks, will they be able to go right over into the Apple product?
For the most part, because they're still using the Google products, the Google products works on the iPad as well.
Okay.
So they get to docs and drive and all of that. You just lose the physical keyboard, and you don't have the apps like you do on the iPad. It's just basically a Chromebook is a browser. It's just the Chrome browser going to the internet.
Oh, okay.
I've heard really good things about the Chromebooks. It seems the teachers that I've talked to really like those better than the
In the
iPad.
PCs.
Yeah.
Well, as we are moving more and more resources to the internet, Zern and Starfall and all that, we do not need a full functional PC with Word, PowerPoint, Excel on them. We need something that can get them to the internet. And these are $200 machines that can get them there.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Eddie.
Next.
Thank you.
Next, we have Scotty Zell's going to present the school safety report. Scott?
We had 4 goals for this year. For school safety, maintain emergency preparedness for the district crisis operations, monitoring safe school development, professional guidelines as dictated by state statutes legislation. Maintain the district's ability to provide violence prevention programs for our students and our staff. Again, depending on what the current legislation is that dictates that. And then security for the district facilities. And those are the same 4 goals that I propose we go ahead and carry over for next year. It's a very broad spectrum. It's a good umbrella of goals to help guide us. And the security one, I'll kind of hit that first. Been a lot of work done in the district. I don't know how aware you are of all the access controls that we've been putting in. Security cameras with microphones that we can tap into live, IP-based security cameras. Those features are big pluses. We'll continue those. That's almost done, the security side of that. Phasing out of the access control project, we'll probably look at our fire alarms, trying to get our fire alarms updated, making them smart. They just piloted a smart fire alarm system in the southeast, and it looks really good. So instead of just having an alarm that tells the fire department, southeast is on fire, it might say actually the boiler room, or it might say pod C in that alert that goes out to the department. So that's a big plus. Professional development and violence prevention. There have been some key legislation last year, this year, and then next year. You'll see 3 big things guiding our teacher in-services and what we present to the kids. One of those is going to be suicide prevention, suicide awareness, looking for the signs and preventative measures. We'll be looking at a lot of sexual abuse training, recognizing the signs of sexual abuse of children. And you'll probably start seeing some more about human trafficking. Human trafficking of children is a major problem along the I-70 corridor, and it's starting to spread now north and south along the I-55 corridor. So you'll see probably some legislation mandating there be some awareness training in all the districts for that. It's starting to show up in Southwest Missouri because of the hospitality industry out there. But major problems along the I-70 corridor with that. We went this summer with a new emergency operations plan. That emergency operations plan follows the guidelines that U.S. Department of Ed has put out. I decided to go with that model. There's a couple of models we could have went with for a new plan. The Department of Ed model puts us in line for future grant money. When we get ready to apply for a grant, there's a little series of checklists, 3 little boxes that you have to basically check off. And one of those is, do you have a multi-hazard plan that addresses these needs, and the Department of Ed model just fit that perfectly, fit that mold. Not much change from the old operations plan to this new one, but I went ahead and met with several agencies, Scott County, Madden County. We got together over the course of the summer with several meetings and put together that plan. That's not finished. An emergency plan's never really finished, because once you practice it, you find out, well, that wasn't any good. And you want to go back and rewrite it. And think, we might want to practice this particular section different. But we'll probably be looking this coming year at recovery. We've been talking with Eddie and some of the neighboring districts. How do we back up our data? How do we recover from a disaster? Things like that. I think we're very prepared for crisis. I think we've got the supplies and the training in place. We've got the plans in place, and we do a lot of good drills and practices. Where everybody falls short, I think it's in the recovery planning. When you don't really know what you're going to run into in a recovery situation, but the planning part of it is a good discussion place to start with. With the first goal that I talked to you about, we also looked at communications, crisis communications. We have the ability now, administrators can on the fly tie into their intercom systems with the two-way radio, give updates and announcements. They don't actually have to be there at the intercom and flip a switch anymore. They can be in touch, and then district-wide, the administrators can notify schools a lot faster with that kind of communication. We put in a new panic button at the high school campus. Last year, I talked to the board a little bit about the PC duress panic button system that we have installed at all the schools. I put one at the preschool. I thought that particular part of the school campus might like to have a little bit faster notification to alert for an emergency situation. Somebody comes in, custody issues are hot. Might be somebody come in and try to take the kid into custody battle. So we've got that extra layer of redundancy that I feel like we'd like to have. Next year, I want to do a mobile panic button that would cover the field house and the stadium, so that we can send out, what it does is it sends out an alert over public service dispatch, and DPS gets the alert, and they all come, whether they're on duty or not, they get the alert and they all come. One of our schools accidentally tripped it in trying to show their secretary how to do it, and they were all coming. And they know about it, they practice listening for it. The system works when we ever have to have it. Does the board have any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Ezel?
Pretty thorough.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Scott. Thank you.
The next report is finally here. That's our annual performance report, our APR, and Mr. Mays is going to go through that information. Some information I'm pretty excited about, actually. So, Chuck, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, great. I'm going to see, if you don't mind, I'm going to sit up here tonight because I have several papers I want to manipulate. And that would help me if you'll give me about 20 seconds or so. Or less, I'll be ready to go. Okay. First of all, let me join Mr. Williams too, saying that I'm very happy to present this report to you tonight. We're very pleased with our score of 118.5. It's a very good thing. It says a lot for our teachers of our district, administrators, and those that work with the district. The first thing I did on the first sheet you've got is the graph of the APR comparisons. And this is kind of what I look at when I'm looking at APR. I want to know how we compare with the districts around us that are similar demographics, similar size. And usually I look at these four districts, counting us, Sikeston, Cape, Poplar Bluff, and New Manor, because they're very close to us. Actually, we compare really well with Poplar Bluff when you're looking at academics and how we do. You can see by the chart or the graph that really we are very close to Cape Girardeau and Poplar Bluff with our scores. New Manor had a bit of a bad year this year. They've slipped a little bit. But I'm pleased to see that we're where we are. I also love the shape of that graph. I know that sounds kind of silly in a way, but that's the shape you want going up, and not just going up, but going up pretty sharply, and so that's nice to see. The table below is my table. That is not one generated by DESE. And so I do want to talk about that for a few minutes. First of all, for each of those subject areas on the left-hand side, you can see the points possible. And so when we're looking at this, you can see in ELA, for example, we scored 15 out of 16 points this year. For math subject, we scored 15 out of 16. For science, we scored 9 out of 16. And then for social studies, we only scored 8, but you'll notice that we only had 8 points possible, so we got the maximum amount there. Subgroup achievement, and I know we have some new members on the board, and honestly, if you don't deal with it all the time, it's easy to forget what makes up the subgroups. Our subgroups are free reduced lunch students, IEP students, African American students, Hispanic students, and ELL or English language learner students. So any of those students who fall into any of those categories are included in this subgroup or super subgroup it's called. So just looking at those students, we received an academic score of 3 out of 4 points for ELA based on their achievement. Math, we received 3 out of 4. Science, we did receive 0 out of 4, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And social studies, there's only 2 points possible because we only have the one test. We received 2 out of 2 on that one. Okay, I forgot to mention too, we had 47 points total in the overall academic area. In the subgroup achievement, we received 8 total points. The next category is the college and career readiness. For CCR 1 through 3, and before I talk about that, let's talk about what that is. CCR 1 through 3 is a way of looking at the scores of our students who take the ACT, SAT, ASVAB, and COMPASS test. Of course, ACT and SAT you're probably familiar with. ASVAB is the military test that we give, and the COMPASS test is a test that 3-year-olds give and junior colleges give. When I say it's the students, that's the graduates from last year that we look at. And those are the ones who are calculated in that score. I'll explain a little bit about that more in just a few minutes. But we received 6 out of 10 points in that area. For CCR 4, we received 7.5 points. That is a measure of a graduates again, and how they performed on dual credit, dual enrollment, AP, and then that also does include the AP test as well. IRCs and Project Lead the Way. Chad mentioned IRCs tonight in his report, and I just went blank. And TSA, thank you. Those are calculated in with this measure on CCR 4. We received 7.5 out of 10 points in that area. CCR 5 and 6 we received 10 out of 10 points. Of course, you're familiar with Alan Cheater talking about the graduation ball he does every year. This is where this calculation comes into play, and Alan did a great job with that. And we received 10 out of 10 points in that area, for a total of 23.5 out of 30 points for our college and career readiness. For attendance, we received 10 out of 10 points. Attendance is a little odd when you first hear it. Once you get used to it, it's not, okay, that's how it's measured. But the attendance is not just the overall attendance rate, it's the percentage of students who attend 90% of the time or greater. And the goal for that is 90%. So our goal is to have 90% of our students attending 90% of the time or greater. And so that's where that calculation comes in, and we receive 10 out of 10 points for that. Graduation rate, the goal for this is 92% graduation rate. We exceed that any way you calculate it. There are several ways we calculate it. We'll discuss that in a few minutes too. We received 30 out of 30 points there. And that's where we received our 118.5 points. Okay, any questions so far? All right, we're turning the page. The next page is just something I know the board likes to see. I put it in a slightly different format this year, bigger, because I have to have my glasses to see anymore, so I like the big numbers. These are a compilation of our area APR scores from around this area. I did include more districts this year, so you could kind of see, and I also went back and gave you a 4-year view of that. And so you can see that we compare about in the middle for the most part, especially if you look at districts our size and our demographics. We'll see that Dexter's higher than us, Jackson's higher than us, and they usually are at that higher end. The 118.5 is a very good score. I'm very proud of it. I'd like to see us get up into the 120s, and so that's my personal goal for next year, is to see if we can extend it into the 120s, and I think that's very doable with our district. Okay, any questions with that? Okay, moving on. The third page is a page very similar to what it's very similar to what you looked at a minute ago. This page doesn't have a lot of new information, but I want to go to the next page in just a minute, so I want to put this on here as well. A couple of things you haven't seen on the other page, again, is the APR total from 2014 to 2017, and you can see those numbers going across there, and you can see how we went from 95 to 108 to 113.5 to 118.5. At the bottom of the page also is our 11th grade ACT census information. This does not calculate in as a separate calculation for APR, other than it just calculates in with the ACT part we talked about earlier. But it is interesting information, and so I do want to point that out on this page as well. Unless you have a question, I'm going to the second page. This is the page that's very similar to the spreadsheet I gave you a minute ago. I do want to talk about a few things on this page, though. First of all, under the academic achievement, if you look at my page, let's just look at ELA, for example, first. If you look at the page I gave you on the front, you don't have to go back, you can take my word for it. You would have seen that we had 15 out of 16 points for ELA, and the same number is represented here. However, for math, I have us as having 15 points, but if you look in 2017 on this sheet, you'll see we only received 6 points. So that can be confusing if you don't know why that is. I wanted to show you the front sheet, how we got the calculation added up to 118.5. On the DESI sheet that I've given you, if you add those numbers up, for example, if you add 15 plus 6 plus 9 plus 8, you will not get 47. And so I wanted to make sure you knew where that 47 came from. So let's look at that in a little more detail. I mentioned the 15 out of 15 points is where the ELA numbers came from. That's the same on both sheets. However, for math in 2017, DESI only shows us getting 6 points, yet we were able to count 15 points. The reason that's the case, if you remember, I came to you earlier this year and said that the Algebra 1 and English 2 scores were not comparable with the state. They weren't happy with the process from the vendor, and therefore they wouldn't be used in the calculations for EOC. Because the state did that, and because many districts have a higher achievement at the secondary level, that wouldn't be fair just to remove those scores completely. So the state allowed us to be hold harmless in ELA and math only, so that we could count whatever score was higher in 2015, 16, or 17. So if you look under mathematics, you'll see in 2016 we received 15 points, and that's in bold print. That's the number we actually got to calculate for math. Okay? And so that's where that number came from on the front sheet. So continuing on, science, we received 9 points in 2017. That's what we got to count. Same thing for social studies, we received 8 points. We got to count that. And again, if we add 15 in ELA, plus the 15 in math, plus the 9, plus the 8, that's how we got 47 points. You'll see under subgroup achievement, we did get to count the 3 points for this year. Under subgroup achievement for ELA. For math, we were able to count the 2015 number of 3 points. That's where that number came from. In science, we had a 0, and in social studies, we had a 2. That only worked in ELA and math, and that's where those 8 points came from. The college and career readiness, attendance, and graduation rate were unchanged from the front sheet. Any questions? I know that can be a little confusing. Okay. Actually, we'll skip 2 pages over. All right, so I'm on the page that says 2017 LEA Annual Performance Report Final, and then it says LEA Supporting Data there. Okay, this is where my inner nerd comes out, because this is my favorite sheet. I don't know that she'll share my love for this sheet. So, Rebecca does not. So I know I've been accused in the past of taking 20, 30, 40 minutes to go over this. I'll try to reduce that down somewhat. But we do have a few new people on the board who've not seen this before, so I want to at least explain what all these things are, and then I'll show you how the calculations take place and move on from there.
Our nerd doesn't go that high.
Your nerd doesn't go that high. Okay, so I won't take 30 minutes, and I'll keep it down maybe like 4 or 5 on this page. First of all, I want to explain kind of what we're looking at. Almost everything with APR is based on a 3-year average, or 3 years of data. So on this whole page, everything is pretty much going to be based on 3 years. That's why you see the 2015, 16, and 17 numbers. Okay? You also have, on the left-hand side, under English Language Arts, for example, you will have a status score, a progress score, and a growth score. The status is our 3-year average of just how we did in that subject area. Progress is kind of what you would expect. It's the growth that we had. The growth is calculated on a rolling average. You look at the rolling average of 2015-16 compared to the rolling average of 2016-17, and that's how you calculate your progress points. Growth is a way that the state, and it's a pretty complicated formula. By complicated, I have trouble understanding it, but I can tell you what it does. The growth compares students as they progress through the different grades. So when you're looking at growth, you're not looking at how this year's 6th graders compared to last year's 6th graders. You're looking at how this year's 6th graders compared to how they were in 5th grade, how they were in 4th grade, and how they're progressing. And if they're progressing to a point that they would be proficient by 7th or 8th grade, they count in this growth calculation. and we receive points based on that. There is one catch as you go through here. You're going to see sometimes that we receive growth in progress points. Unfortunately, we can only use one or the other. We can't use both. We can't add them together. It'd be cool if we could, but we can't. Also, I do want to point out that you won't see the growth calculation in science or social studies. It's only for ELA and math. Okay? Also, if you look over a little bit from the right on the headings of the different columns, you'll notice that one of those columns says metric. Metric is another word for the score or the measure, and so that's where we see how we actually did. So for example, under ELA, our metric or our score was 305.4. If you look at the MPI in 15, 16, and 17, where it averaged those three numbers, you would come up with 305.4. And then our progress metric, our progress score is 4.8 points. That's used, they use the rolling averages and have a calculation they come up with that gives us that point. That's the difference in points to the rolling average. And then we have the growth points as well. When we're looking at how we did, if you see right next to the metric on the right-hand side, DESE measures things in 4 different levels. We have the level we want to meet is the 2020 target. It'll say target on here. We haven't met the target on any of these on this page. For the level right below that is on track, where we're on track to reach the target. Then we have the approaching level, and then we have the floor. For academics, any score below 300 is considered below the floor. We don't receive any points for that. Okay, one more thing I want to explain before we look at the data. I mentioned MPI score a minute ago. So for example, if you look at ELA in 2017, you can see the MPI was 309.6. 2016 was 306.8, 2015 299.7. Just so you know how the MPI score is calculated, if you take the percentage of the students who scored advanced in ELA, multiply that by 5. If you take the percentage of students who scored proficient and multiply that by 4, the percentage of students who scored basic and multiply it by 3, and then just the number of below basic students and add that together, that's where that MPI score comes from. All right, I know I went fast, but hopefully you get some idea where we're at. Ask questions as we go along. So anyway, when we're looking at our ELA scores, we received, had the average of 305.4, which was in the approaching range, which gave us 9 points. We had 6 points for progress and no growth points, so 9 plus 6 was 15, that's what we counted in the ELA. For math, we didn't receive any status points, and the reason is because we scored below 300 on the 3-year average. Just so you know, the reason this fell from last year, the math test changed from 2014 to 2015. It became more rigorous, and across the state, the scores dropped. In fact, we dropped to 280 in 2015, which is quite a bit below the floor, and so that brought our average down. You'll see we bounced back in 16 and 17. 16, we were 298.4, 17, 300.7. If we continue on this rate, we will at least get back to the approaching level and receive our 9 points again, but that's why we received 0 there. We did, however, receive 3 progress points for making gains on our rolling average, and we received even more points for growth because we did show growth looking at individual students. So we received a total of 6 points in that area, and that's where our 6 points for math came from. In science, we received the 9 points for our status for science, and then in social studies, we received 5 points for our status out of 8 because we were in the approaching level. But if you notice, we met the exceeding level, which is the replacement for on target on progress. We hit the highest level we could, and that gave us 6 points. Now, you'd like to think 5 plus 6 would be 11, we'd receive 11 points. However, if you turn the page or scroll down, the highest you can get in social studies is 8 points, but that's where our 8 points came from. All right. Any questions? I'm going to go a little faster. On subject of pardon?
Have you taken a breath yet?
Am I talking as fast as Ann did? Man, Ann was just flying, and I'm like, let me slow down a little bit.
No,
okay.
Right, speed up.
Well, I'm watching the time, I'm thinking, I know, but I want to cover this stuff. Okay, I'm not going to go through each individual measures on here. I'm just going to kind of highlight what we did on this one. If you have questions or want me to go over more, just tell me. For ELA, again, this is our subgroup, which traditionally is lower than our group as a whole. We did have 3 progress points, no status points because we were below 300. We did show 3 progress points because we did show gains in ELA. Math, we didn't receive any points, but we were able to count the 3 points from 2015, and so that calculated in this year. I will say, if you look, even though we didn't receive any points, we did show growth from 16 to 17. It just wasn't enough to get points. Science, you'll see that we received 0 points for the subgroup, and we actually went down in science. And I will tell you that science is a little bit of a concern for me. And we are looking at science in grades, well, actually from K all the way up to 8, and looking at the curriculum this year and trying to see where we're kind of falling on that. But I think that that's something that's fixable for us, and so we're doing a review of that this year, as well as other subjects too, but a concentration on science. I will mention too, Ms. Troop is our science coach, most of you know that. She's also been working with elementary in the 5th and 6th grade and making sure that good coordination from elementary into middle and high school. And social studies, we had 1 point for our status because we were at the approaching level, and then we had 1.5 because that's the highest we can get for our progress. And so we received a total of 2 points in social studies because that's the most points we can earn. Okay, moving on to college and career readiness. The way the calculation is for college and career readiness, you're looking at your graduates from the previous year, or actually, let me back up. You're looking at your graduates from that year. So the graduates we're looking at were our 2017 graduates. And we receive points, for example, on 1 through 3, this is our ACT, ASVAB, Compass. We receive points based on how well those students score. If they score at the level that we want them to score, the state wants them to score, we get to count 1 point for that graduate. So it's kind of a one-to-one correspondence. If they receive slightly lower than that, DESE allows us to count as 0.75. And on ACT, if they score really high, we get to count it as 1.25. So there is a little calculation that goes into that. So when you look at our status for 2017, for example, we earned 63.2% of the points, which corresponds pretty closely to our number of graduates, that basically 63.2 met that goal. And since we had 218 graduates, if you take the 137.75 points we earned, divide that by 218, that's how you get your 63.2%. You'll notice it was a pretty decent jump from 2016. So we did earn 6 points out of 10. I will tell you that we had the 62% in 2015. Next year, when that 56.9 is at the lowest end of that, that does give us an opportunity for growth points. So we may see that one raise a little bit next year, but that is something that we want to continue working on. So we received 6 points on that area, that measure. On advanced placement, again, that's our AP, dual credit, dual enrollment. We received 7.5 points in this area. We didn't receive any progress points. We got a total of 7.5. On the graduation follow-up, we received 7.5 points for our status and also 7.5 for our progress, because if you notice, we made a pretty good gain. And you can almost look at the 2017 number compared to 2015, and that's where you really want to show the gain. And we showed a pretty good gain across those 2 years. That's the reason for our 7.5 points. So we received all 10 points there. All right. Attendance rate. I'm a little concerned about this, and I've shared this with Mr. Williams and Ms. Hallfield, Mr. Crater, Ms. Boardman, and the principals. We actually earned all 10 of our points last year because we did have 90% of our kids did attend 90% of the time or more. What I'm concerned about is our 2015 number was 90.6, which is good. We're going to lose that number next year. And so we're going to have 91.5 to calculate in, and then the 89.5 or whatever we get this year. And we've kind of been hit by the flu this year, so already early, and our attendance rate is a little bit low. So we need to really get that number up, and I know the principals are working hard on that, so we want to keep these 10 points for attendance. Graduation rate, we've never had an issue meeting. Again, they calculated 4 different ways. You get a 4, 5, 6, and 7-year calculation rate. But the bottom line is we want to hit at least 92% in one of those, and we hit them on all 4. And because of that, we get to count all 30 points for graduation rate. And so that's how our calculations are made. I went through that pretty fast. Let me see if I skipped anything. Yeah, I'm trying to go back and start over.
Yeah. I tell you what, start in about 45 minutes.
In about 45 minutes?
Yeah.
That'll work?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to ask him to get out a piece of paper. Pencil. I thought you were going to get out a piece of
You know,
paper.
one year
Pencil,
I brought calculators
quiz.
and handed out. We actually did the calculations. I haven't done that since that first year. That didn't go over real well.
Make a motion to do that.
Do you have any questions? And all joking, you do have a comment?
The advanced placement, so we went down, but what, it looked like we were higher above the average than we were the year before. Am I reading that wrong?
Okay, let me get to advanced placement here a little quick, sorry. Okay.
But we were lower than 15.
Because we had the 4, okay, we had, what was your question again, to make sure I understand right?
Well, if I'm reading this, 17 it was 99.75.
Yes.
16 it was 87.25.
Right.
Well, we got less points.
We received the 7.5. Did we receive more in 2016?
You showed 10.
What's that?
Show 10.
That's the points possible. 10 points are possible and receive the 7.5. I can look. We did receive 10 in 2016. I would have to go back and look. We don't meet the level for the 3-year average to get the full 10 points, so I'm sure I'd have to go back and look, but I'm sure that we received points for growth from that. And if you look at that 2015 number, we had 50.8, and the way the rolling average works, you can kind of look at the first year of the 3-year average and last year. Because that 50.8 was higher than we scored either of the 2 years, that's going to make it almost impossible for us to get progress points there. And I'm sure that's what we did, is lose the 2.5 points. I did want to mention, and I do have the number in front of me, but I don't want to take the time to look at it unless you just want to know. That rolling average of 45.5 is actually fairly close to the 2020 target. We're a few percentage points off. I don't know if we'll hit it next year, but if we could make some gains in that area, it would not be inconceivable for us to hit that on target. Excuse me, that 2020 target. So that's a good thing. All right. Any other questions? I threw a lot at you, so if you do have questions, you know you have my email address, my phone number. Feel free to call me, email. I'm happy to look up information for you.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck.
Okay, number 7, we're on student enrollment as of December 1st, 2017. And from your superintendent notes, you can tell that we're at 3,330 students, and we're down 17 students from the previous month. We're down 10 in elementary, which was K through 6, and we're down 3 in 7 through 12, and the alternative school, we are up 4. So, or excuse me, we're down 4 as well. So that's kind of where we are with attendance enrollment as of this month. Student discipline data, that information again is in your packet for your review. Broken down by building, broken down by incident, also broken down by ISS and OSS listing. Next, board policy consideration. We have 4 policies for the board's consideration. BBBA, which is board member qualifications. This is going in line with Senate Bill 111. State statute to allow those who've been found guilty of or pled guilty to a federal misdemeanor to run for elective office. And that has been added into BBBA. Board policy DGA, authorized signatures. This is something the MSBA has updated to include signatures for the sale of property, and as per state statute. Board policy DJF, which is purchasing, and basically they've changed a sentence or 2 in there while dealing with emergency situations to clarify the particular policy. Board policy EHB, which is technology usage. There's some parts in this that we're basically, our MSBA is asking us to look at and put into the policy. And one is to create a process where students, parents, employees can request a website to be unblocked. And part of that is, the reason why they're saying that is because there's been some law cases, legal cases out there where some school districts have been sued because they have blocked certain sites from being viewed by, for example, a student or a teacher or so on. There's also been added to this policy an inventory and disposal as far as the computers that you have and the process you take in order to dispose of them or surplus them. And then also there's some language that was removed, more specifically that of the No Child Left Behind Act that has been removed from the policy since that is no longer in effect. Lastly then, we have board policy KBA, and that public's right to know, and that policy has been rescinded and all that information has been placed in BDDL. Questions? All right, very good. Very good. We'll go to requiring actions. First item under requiring action is to schedule an executive session to discuss student matters and personnel matters immediately following this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Crumpacker?
Yes.
Ms. Drury?
Yes.
Mr. West?
Yes.
Mr. Alcorn?
Yes.
Yes.
Next item, and I appreciate Mike you waiting. We have the consideration of the FY17 audit, and Mr. Mike Radke. Well, Mike has enjoyed every minute of this meeting. You're a good sport, Mike, and we do appreciate it. We do. I'll turn it over to you, Mike.
Okay. I'm Mike Radke with Van CPAs, and we did your audit this year. I'm here to go over the audit report with you, get some high points. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll try to answer them for you. As I said, just hit some high points. The main thing, what you're paying us for is the opinion. We're giving you an unqualified opinion. That's a clean opinion. That's as good as you get. Doing a good job here, and we had no issues. Your financial statements were materially correct, and no problems there. Starts on page 4, the management discussion and analysis. You can completely tune me out and go back and read this MD&A. This Boardman puts that together. It's a very good summary of what went on this year, what affected you this year, what's going to affect you in the future, and I think you get a lot of information out of that. She does a very good job putting that together for you. And it is required part of the financial statement. I think that's a very important part, that it gives you a good synopsis of what's going on within the district. If we go to page 14, is statement of activities, modified cash basis. This is an overall outlook of the entire district, everything that's reported here. Activities, the cost of those activities, and the overall net position. The net position being total assets of the district, which is your modified cash basis, that's your cash. We have a net position currently of $23.5 million. Last year was $16.1 million. So it's a pretty good increase, but that's a little bit misleading because of the bonds that were issued. That's an additional and other financing source, so that bumped your bottom line $8 million. And overall, it would be down about $857,000 if you took that bond issue out of consideration. Page 16, well, let's stop at 15, is your balance sheet, your fund balance. Each fund is listed there and the balances in each individual fund. Then we go to page 16 is your P&L, statement of receipts, disbursements, and changes in fund balance, modified cash basis. Shows your total receipts at the top, $34.5 million, an increase of $532,000 over last year. Total disbursements, $34.4 million, that's a decrease of $849,000 over the prior year. So overall, if you look at just the operation of the district, your balance has increased $85,000. But what throws a kink into the works is, again, the $8 million bond issue that we talked about, which increased your balances. But we also look at the bottom, and your statement of activities is different because the internal service fund, which is your insurance activity. We had a loss there of $942,000. So that's kind of something you can't plan for. We're looking at the claims there. Claims, you don't know what your claims are going to be from year to year. Last year, your insurance program, the fund balance increased $511,000. The year before, it went down $603,000. So they're kind of on a seesaw there, depending on one item. That's the claims paid. Last year you had $2.3 million. This year you had $3.9 million. There's no way of knowing what your insurance claims are going to be from year to year. Let's see. Page 37 is the retirement plan. This is GASB 68. This is a requirement that this be reported because your modified cash basis. We report the liability. We disclose the liability. We do not book the liability. Last year you had a liability of $19 million. This year's $25 million. That's because the actuaries decided that you're only going to return 7.75% versus 8% last year. So that kind of bumped your liability up. This is not something that's going to affect the operations of day-to-day operations of the district, but in the long term, over the next 30 or 40 years, you're going to be paying out this large amount for the retirement benefits of the employees of the district in the future. We had one minor finding that was related to the budgeting a deficit in the teacher's fund. And again, that's pretty immaterial, and it's hard to do that, it's hard to make that balance without going in and actually amending the budget to actual at the end of the year. It's more important that you as a board utilize the budgeting process as a planning tool, and you're doing a good job with that. And this is just something that happens occasionally. It's a very minor finding, but it is something that we have to report. Because the size of the district, we do a single audit, which requires us to test federal programs. The threshold for federal expenditures which trigger the single audit is now $750,000. It went up from $500,000, but the size of your district, that's not really going to affect you. You're always going to require a single audit to be a large, have a large amount of federal expenditures. On page 66 are the overall federal expenditures, 4.6 million. Last year you had 4.5 million. We are required to test 40% of those expenditures. So we selected the Title I program and special education program to be tested. As part of that testing, we test internal controls related to that program and compliance related to that program. Mr. Crater administered both of those programs. Everything was fine there. We had no findings related to internal controls. The internal controls were in place. If the internal controls are effective, you should have no compliance issues. And that was the case here. Everything was very clean there. And we had no findings related to anything there as far as the federal programs. And that's about all I have for that. And that's a very clean report and very good report. I'm going to have a letter here related to another standard of the accounting industry that we report to you as the board, any issues or concerns we had while performing the audit. This is a SAS 114 letter. Because the board is not involved in daily operations, is not there when we perform the audit, we provide this letter to you to let you know if we had any problems. We had no problems at all. You have a very professional staff here. Mrs. Gordon does a very good job. There's controls in place here. We don't see that in very many districts, but because of the size of the district, you have enough people in place to have some controls that are effective. This is the first year you've not received 2 letters. Every other year we had a management comment letter, which when we find any issues or problems or suggestions we can make related to operating the district and making it more efficient and more effective, we give you a letter. We had no findings this year. We had no issues. Everything was really good shape. And that's a compliment to your staff here, but as well to the board that does a very good job. You're operating effectively, you're watching the expenditures, and a lot of exciting things going on here with the new school going on, a lot of good reports coming in, so pretty exciting overall.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have any questions, that's all I've got.
Thank you very much.
That's good.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for waiting an hour and a half.
To accept the audit.
Yeah,
Good job, Lauren. Thank you.
yeah. I'll entertain a motion to accept the audit.
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Merry
Thank you
Christmas.
much.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Miss Jacqueline, are you ready? Next we have,
You're up.
we had consideration of the 2018-2019 school calendar. I have Jacqueline Scott here. She is a chairperson or the leader of the calendar committee, and she's going to share that information with the board.
So every year, we start the calendar development process by sending a survey out to the staff just to get feedback on what they would like to see in a calendar. So we thank you for allowing that teacher input. The survey was sent at the end of October. The results we got back were pretty typical to what we see every year. The staff prefers to start early in August and get out as early in May as possible, and they like us to protect the 2 weeks of Christmas. With those results in mind, the committee met in November and came up with 2 calendar options, which I believe you guys have. Option 1 is modeled after the current calendar that we have right now. And for option 2, we did some restructuring of the way our PD days were met, which allowed for a spring break and an earlier release day in May. So as the results came in, we polled the staff in November, and we received a record number of 324 votes. Calendar 1.
What's the total?
That's a question for you.
Staff.
Well, that's a pretty large number. Well, we have roughly 242, if I remember correctly, drawing that number out, and that's talking about certified staff. Then you also have to include in there part-time staff. So I really don't know what that total number would be. We employ almost 500 people within the district, so.
And certified and non-certified vote
Right.
for the calendar, so,
But support staff do not, do they?
yes.
That's not
Everybody had the opportunity.
Everybody.
Yeah, everybody had the opportunity to vote on this thing.
So there's 324 votes. Calendar 1 received 48 votes, which was 14.81%, and calendar 2 received 276 votes, which was 85.19%. So on behalf of the calendar committee, I'd like to ask that you accept calendar 2 as the 2018-19 school calendar.
Recommendation of the calendar committee to accept calendar number 2, which is supposed to be yellow. I don't think it's yellow on here.
It is yellow.
Yellow, but that's a yellow calendar that was listed on the survey as the calendar for the 2018-2019 school year.
Administration too.
Excuse me.
Administration too. You said the calendar committee.
Well, it's a recommendation, and I'm accepting that. Okay.
I have a question just real quick. I just want to ask you, on calendar 1, you had the 2 in-service dates in August, the Wednesday and Thursday of rodeo. And then on the one that won, you had it on the Thursday and Friday. Did you mean to do that?
No, and it was really just trying to add in some variety. We did add an extra day at the beginning this year for some extra training that we're going to have for dyslexia, and we moved our school safety training to before school. But as far as the way those days fell, no, there was really no rhyme or reason, just for variety.
I was just curious.
We had asked about, what was it, the Monday following Thanksgiving, opposed to having the Monday after Thanksgiving off, opposed to having the Monday after Easter, is that correct? Is that what we...
Yeah, that's what it was. That was your discussion the other day, Chad. Yes. And maybe Mr. Mays can address that. I mean, because that's a PD day. That's a professional development day, the November 26th day. Whereas,
22nd.
Yeah, the 22nd of April.
Just giving families a longer...
And Easter instead of Thanksgiving.
So is your question for me, would it be a difference with PD, or is that what you're asking, or?
Well, if you took that day in November as a day of school, you would have to replace that with the 22nd. It'd have to be a PD day because you need to get that extra professional development day in there.
How many PD days are required by the state?
It's not. There's
So
not.
is it
You're
the
given.
district's decision? Is that?
Yeah. And a lot of it is based upon, you have so much money that you are allocated to spend on professional development. A lot of that deals with, like going to see someone at a conference or something like that. But research states that teachers need professional development, just like all occupations need to be trained in something. And so we feel like, and we feel very strongly about it, that our staff needs to be trained, needs the opportunity to collaborate and share with one another in order to be better professionals in their field. So, one time we had 12, I believe, or 11 this year. And we're going down to, and this is where you question, we went down to 9.5 PD days this next year, Rebecca.
Is there anything established on November 26th as far as the PD that you're providing on that day?
Nothing at this point. We meet in the summer. We have a PD meeting at the end of, I just went blank, at the end of May, where we set the goals for the next year. The only concern I would have is, and maybe I'm not understanding right, but if we remove the PD day from November, so we wouldn't have a PD day, is that what we're talking
I think the
about?
question would be to move it to April.
And then so we move it to April, so
The
we
Monday
have,
after Easter.
Monday after.
so we have a half day on the Thursday and then another day on the Monday afterward.
Or you'd have two, I see what you're saying.
So that would be, you're putting a day and a half of PD at the very end of your school year. So I don't know how productive it would be. I know the November PD day is usually better quality than what we have in April, because April people are tired and you're looking at the end of the year, so.
We're just kind of thinking, our conversation centered around parents and families and travel, Easter weekend, opposed to by Sunday after Thanksgiving, from a parent perspective, we're ready for our kids to be back in school. And it would be more beneficial to a family in springtime. You can take that Easter weekend and do more if you had that Monday off opposed to the Monday after Thanksgiving.
I'm sure that, I don't want to speak for the calendar committee, but I'm sure you guys did it all.
We had a tough job this year. We tried to do everything we could to please the staff and still keep an academically sound calendar. We wanted to meet the PD requirements that we had set by the district. So there's a little bit of a leeway there. What I see with moving that is we did go down to 2 half days in September and October, where we usually have a full day. So then to take out November, you're kind of really cutting PD for
I'm curious as to the conversation around that.
And am I right that November is our only full day of in-service other than the days before school? So I'd really rather have that first semester if at all possible.
Yeah.
Maybe something to consider next year.
And I know in the past we've had that Monday off too, kind of switch that up.
I make a motion that we accept the calendar committee's recommendation for calendar 2.
And I will second it.
Any further discussion or comments from Ms. Scott? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Jack.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
That's
Appreciate the work you've done on this as well.
yeoman's work.
And I'm sure if any board member would like to attend the
You guys are
calendar
welcome.
there was one.
The next item is consideration of 2018-2019 school start date of August 15th, 2018, and that's pursuant to State Statute 171.031. And you remember from back in August, I got emails kind of bombarded by DESE stating that if you start school 10 or more days prior to the first Monday in September, you have to have this approved by the Board of Education. So although I think we did when we accepted it, we're going to make a separate item here. We're going to make sure that this is covered. So with that, I am recommending, based upon the calendar recommendation, I'm recommending that August 15th, 2018 be the first day of school for the 1890 school year.
So moved. Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, next we have the approval of curriculum, and we have 2 items here. We have conservation and natural resources, and we have health education. So Mr. May is going to present that.
Yes, I am. On the conservation natural resources, this is a new course that Jessica Toombs has proposed having, and she submitted the curriculum for this. This is a semester course. You will notice the title is Conservation of Natural Resources. Looking through the learning targets, you can see that she does have a focus on Missouri conservation, which I thought was pretty good. And I don't really have much more to say. I know that's hard to believe. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And I believe Mr. King also might get answer some questions. I'm putting him on the spot, but
I'm good.
I think that's a great addition.
Yeah.
I really do, yeah.
For materials and resources, they cite MDC publications, but IML, Fish and Wildlife Management, I'm not familiar with. Do you know what IML is?
I'm in the same boat you're with, and on that one.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
sorry, I don't either.
It's on the first page after the course description. It's got material and resources. And I can understand MDCs, but I'm not sure.
MDC is Missouri Department of Conservation? Okay.
And that spells out Missouri Department of Conservation.
Yeah.
I don't know what IML is either.
I will find out for
I'm
you,
not
but I
sure where
don't
you're
know.
seeing it.
Oh, it's on materials and resources. It's underneath Missouri Department of Conservation publications.
Come on here.
I'm not sure what I am stands
Yeah.
for.
We're gonna be.
Part, some part of it is wildlife.
Only if we have a device where we can look it up.
True, true.
It's true.
Is Mr. Lowry helping me with that? Mr.
Uh,
Lowry is assisting with that.
One of the focuses for the class is to try to hit the forestry and conservation, the fisheries that aren't hit in the other classes that we offer, to hit that area, because we do have some students that are interested in the conservation and the fishery parts of it. Forestry, not as much here. Back where I'm from, forestry is a pretty big deal. So, lot more trees up there.
I do want to compliment Mrs. Tim. She got this together very quickly once once it was proposed to me. Her and Mary, and also and Chad, were able to get this curriculum done very quickly. So I appreciate that.
The acronym, I believe, is Intensively Managed Landscapes.
I don't know if that
What
helps.
I've been reading is from Iowa, but it's.
There you go.
Iowa.
There we go.
Field drainage, types of soil, field drainage alone to hold the water for rice field.
To protect the carbon in the soil and all that.
Are we gonna do them separately, like, so I mean, those would be accepted?
Yes.
Yeah. that's what
Yes,
we're-
yeah.
Conservation and natural resources.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed?
Okay, next we have health education, which is grades 9 through 12, primarily 9th grade.
I asked Mr. Williams if he could add this curriculum for approval tonight. The only change we've made is it's a clerical or a compliance issue. As you know, we added by state statute, we added CPR instruction and how to maneuver to high school this year. We were required to do so. One of the requirements was also to note it in the curriculum, and I noticed we did not have it noted in the curriculum. So we've corrected that, and I've asked you to approve that, or Mr. Williams has asked you to approve it tonight. If you're wanting to see what we added, it's on page 2 of the report. And I did notice an error today, and I apologize. It's the second learning target. It starts with a little d, demonstrate. That should be capitalized. I fixed it already, corrected it, but on yours, it's demonstrate understanding of cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Thank you, recitation, and how to perform, or properly perform the Howland maneuver. But that's the only change from last year.
Make a motion, we accept the health education curriculum.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? All right.
Okay, we're moving on to approval of paid bills through November of 2000. Yeah. Number 7.
Oh, never mind. I'm ahead of you. My bad. I apologize.
Approval of paid bills paid through November of 2017.
Do we need a roll call, or is?
I didn't notice anything.
I move that we approve the bills as presented.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? All right. Sorry. I jumped
Well, that's
in.
all right, that's all right. And then, number 8 is approval of addendum to agreement with Osmond Roofing Systems. And Brian had sent you an email which explained this. Basically, the work that they had done on the gymnasium this summer, there was something that was uncovered, a piece of the edging, I believe, correct, Brian, and basically water got in. Long story short, water got in and damaged the floor. And so what this is going to do is to go ahead and pay Osmond for some of their work and then take out what it will cost to cover the expense of fixing the gym floor.
So I assume they didn't want to turn it into their insurance office.
They did, their
They did.
insurance company's not been cooperative.
No.
Oh, I will.
So we're
Okay.
gonna have to handle it this way.
So the estimated cost of repair is 25,
Right.
and then what's in this point one where we're gonna, shall remit 34,000?
We're gonna remit we're gonna give them their money less 34.
Less 34, so we're gonna
Yeah.
hold an extra.
We're gonna hold an extra 9.
9, make sure.
Right, and their insurance company they've not denied coverage or anything like that. What they just have said, we wanna charge, we're gonna pay up, based on a depreciated amount. They, and we're like, look, that doesn't work here. And
This is your problem.
That's your problem. Your contract between your insured and the insurance company is your problem. So you get to deal with that. So this is kind of how we're going. This way they go ahead and get their money. And they have done the work and everything passed inspection, so.
I move we approve the addendum to the agreement.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, number 9 is the ratification of the substitute teacher report, and this will need to be roll call.
Yeah, that was moved up from the,
Yeah, that was moved up from the consent item up to the required action.
so move.
Mr. Crumpbaker?
Yes.
Ms. Drury?
Yes.
Mr. Boyce?
Abstain.
Mr. Booth? Yes. Mr.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Alcorn? Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Okay, and the next is the consideration of board policy FEF, which is construction contracts, bidding, and awards. And Chad,
Yeah, we just.
Some clarification?
Clarification based upon, Brian sent an email.
So we had to leave that in there?
Correct. And then, Rebecca, I think you had
Well, we had talked about, another time about this, and whether or not we could allow something over $5,000 on an emergency basis to be approved without the board approving it. And we had talked about the concern that, well, okay, so if it's $5,000 or $6,000, we might not be concerned about it, but what if it's $50,000 and it's a quote emergency? I think that that's something that we shouldn't just release to be allowed to be spent or changed without us having some input of that. So it's the fact that it just says, you can do it at over 5 sometimes.
Are you,
I think it's under change orders, is it?
It's on page
6.
6, right, Rebecca?
Under change orders,
And
yeah.
that was gonna be stricken,
We're
right?
gonna
The
strike.
section right here in the middle,
Yeah.
we're gonna remove that.
we
Okay,
are?
so
Yeah.
that's gonna, it doesn't show taken out, but it's gonna be.
Yeah,
taken
no,
out.
we didn't get that taken care of, but that's what it's gonna do.
Okay.
Rebecca, we're gonna go ahead and change that out, cross it
Okay.
out.
The other thing that I did notice, and I just wanted to ask if we, on the bidding, on page 4, I hate having things say we should do stuff, because then that leaves it for people to try to find things wrong with what we've done in our bid processes. That says that, we have to advertise by law in a certain way. Then it goes on to say, strikes the word may, and says should also advertise, and then it tells how we should try to get responses from contractors. Then those places should include, and then it tells us what we should be doing in terms of advertising. I just don't see the necessity of telling us what we should be doing to leave us potentially open to not be doing what we should do. And then somebody complaining about it, that we didn't do what we should have done under our own policy, when it's not required by law. So I don't think we should open ourselves to have to be doing something.
Brian, do you know if that's being recommended because of statute?
I'm not certain. I don't think that any of the statutory changes that MSBA mentions at the front mandate that language. Look,
in the details, you know, the 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's see.
We also discussed timing not being critical to adopt this policy.
Right.
We can pull this off, I mean, and wait until next month and do a little checking on that. I mean, it's not like it's
So I don't
urgent right
think there's
now.
anything statutorily that I know of that
I don't
requires
think
that.
so.
This is not even shall, this is should. I mean, that's not a statutory
Yeah.
requirement if you should do something. So it's just suggested language that I just think is unnecessary.
What would you use? Or
I just take it out. I think just take it out.
Well, I move that we table the adoption of this policy until we find out whether or not this requires a statute.
Second.
Wait, here's what I would suggest, oh, I'm sorry. I would suggest too that since it's gonna be up for a month, give an opportunity to look at it and,
can
you
we-
know,
When we get the new one, have that paragraph that we're striking, actually having it stricken.
And there's one more, to be consistent with that too, that paragraph on the next page, I think there's an addition in the next line that kind of in the preceding paragraph that refers to it, except as outlined in this policy. That really doesn't need to be in there either. So the whole thing probably ought to be kind of cleaned up.
okay. I'm good with that.
Do we need to make a motion to do that?
We've already made a motion
Yeah,
and
So in a
seconded.
second, to take it till next month.
Oh, okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed?
Is there anything else in the required action? Are we good?
I think we.
Well, then I'm gonna turn it over to you, Mr. Tanner, for
Okay.
consent agenda items.
Right, consent agenda items. Approval of the following minutes, work session November 14th, 2017, regular session November 14th, 2017, executive session November 14th, 2017, special session November 20th, 2017, executive session November 20th, 2017, executive session November 28th, 2017, ratification of the support staff report, ratification of the extra duty assignment report, the acceptance of employee retirement Tracy Henry, acceptance of employee resignation Alexis Springs, approval of board policy as proposed by MSBA FED, and the sale of surplus property pursuant to policy DNAP, maintenance vehicle. I'll entertain a motion to accept those.
So moved.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.